Hello. In this video, I would like to share with you some fictional works and movies and anime that contain characters and storylines that are, very Christ-like and can help you understand what Christ is, and of course, by extension, what God is. So, unfortunately, because there's hardly anyone in this world that are close to me, um, my tools are pretty limited in terms of who I can point you to that are, you could say, similar to me. So that's one reason I want to share this. I actually ended up finding more characters and fictional works that are representative of my state of conscious than I could find in our world right now. And as well, these fictional works contain teachings that are also, you could say, God's teachings, um, especially around morality and goodness and love. Now, of course, I do want to clarify that a lot of these works are, they contain a lot of violence still, because that's one of the main tools used to tell a story and to create emotional impact, right? So I'm not here to promote violence, is what I'll say, because I was worried that people could misinterpret what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, unfortunately, there's quite a bit of violence in most of these works, but that's not what I'm trying to tell you and promote here. So just keep that in mind. I'm just trying to express to you what Christ is, um, and what it's like to be me, you could say. So I'll start with this anime series or manga to start, and which got turned into anime. The series Naruto. I think a lot of people know about Naruto, but they may not connect it with God or Christ. But to me, it's very obvious that this series is very, you could say, divinely inspired. So there are many characters in there that are very Christ-like. I would say most of the protagonists in there are very like saint-like and Christ-like. Um, and as well, it's a good series that portrays like the light and the dark, and you could say demonic spirits versus like angelic spirits. So that will give you a very good understanding of these like this polarity. As well, the main character Naruto is someone I you know felt like a lot of resonance with. In part because he also had a very rough childhood and was rejected by almost everyone, and that there was initially almost nobody who could see his hard work and efforts, and basically he was a very lonely child, and that's something that I could resonate a lot with as well. And so this series is a good one to follow because it allows you to see how these characters grow up and what they become. And as well, this growing up process is very similar to what the enlightenment process is like. Because generally, people go from, say, being ignorant about things to becoming more and more mature and developed. So I felt like this series did a really good job of portraying that. And to me, at least, it really feels like you're following the character's development and enlightenment over time. And as well, there are many profound teachings contained in there, teachings of morality and love and goodness. So I would say it's underrated, actually, because you really have to be quite developed to recognize what I'm trying to tell you, to recognize the intelligence contained in that series, including like having a sense of humor, despite all the seriousness involved in that. Um, so some of the main characters that are very Christ-like are Naruto, Shikamaru, Kakashi Sensei, and Itachi Uchiha. So those are, you say, characters that resonate the most with me. And the next one I'll talk about is Death Note. I'll just mention this one briefly because I haven't seen that one in a while. The main character, Al Lawliet, who's a detective. This character is also quite representative of me because it's like a lot of my work is in the background and very similar to sort of like detective work. But of course, I'm not paid by someone to do that. It's just that's something I do because my mind is able to detect lies and deception relatively easily. Like I would say that I'm basically the best lie detector you could find, um, if you can believe that. So that's why I wanted to mention Death Note. That was also something that was like a standout for me, even though it was also a bit spooky when I was younger. So there's a lot of like dark stuff in there that I'm not necessarily promoting. Just keep that in mind. So next I'll mention Kingsman. Um, Kingsman, like the two movies especially, stood out to me as represented in Agent Galahad and Harry Hart. I would say this character is very Christ-like as well. As well, just the way this movie was done, I could see that it took a lot of conscience to make this into a masterpiece. At least to me, it is. Again, it's kind of, I would say, underrated. Next is what most will know is the Harry Potter series. There are many protagonists in there that are very Christ-like. Uh, some of them are more obvious than others, like Harry Potter, of course. And less obvious would be Professor Severus Snape. I would argue he's also very Christ-like for being this sort of tragic hero, um, and having to, I guess, live as though he's, a bad guy. So, and especially the acting done by Alan Rickman is one of my favorites. Uh, so, I wish Alan Rickman was still around, personally. He's one of my favorites. Did a really good job in that role. Uh, Next is related is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and as represented in Newt Scamander. So Newt is, you could say, a more feminine character in many ways. So he did a good job of portraying what it's like to be like a feminine male, and still being able to being in a lead role. So I think our society generally looks down upon feminine males. It's seen as like less powerful usually, and um, people generally don't see that as strength. But Newt Scamander was able to portray the strength in like the feminine, and so I thought that was really well done. And there's a lot of love in that series as well, portrayed by him and some of the other protagonists. Next is a movie that most people don't know about. It's called Shine, and it's about a pianist growing up in an abusive family and ended up having mental breakdowns as a result of the constant chronic abuse. So he struggled to, you could say, do well. Well, he basically had a meltdown, and that put him in hospital for a very long time. And eventually, he recovered and was able to come back as a pianist once again. So it's sort of this like, again, like the life of like someone that struggled, but eventually triumphed and overcame those things. And that's also, you could say, very similar to my life and how I became Christ or reached the state. Uh, it wasn't like an easy journey for me in this lifetime. So, anyways, especially the part about growing up in an abusive family. So that was also like something that resonated a lot with me, and of course the piano part. So very similar life trajectory in a way. And last few mentions, but not least, is I'll just mention Miyazaki films, especially as portrayed in House Moving Castle and My Neighbor Totoro. Those two are my favorites as well. There's just so much magic in there, and that are very much representative of like kingdom of heaven state. If more people were to reach here, that is, because right now it's like I said, I'm just kind of here alone. It's hard to experience that alone. But it would be more, you could say, lighthearted and joyful if more people were to reach here. So that's why I wanted to share those things, as well. Incredible artwork with Miyazaki films. So yeah, that's it for me for now. I know there's tons of other works, so if your favorite movies didn't make it, don't take it personal, because I'm just picking ones that I feel is the most similar to Christ State, because I'm trying to express that to you, because I feel like this state is still hardly understood, and even amongst like Christians, because you know Christ was, well, he didn't get to live a very long life to begin with, so, and it's been a long time ago, so the communication is poor in terms of what the state is like and what Christ's functions are. Because there are many functions contained within this being, that I would say are not yet well understood, and some of them can be almost like uncomfortable for people to understand. Because I think people like to portray like a more feminine and innocent version of Christ, but that's not entirely true. Like, is what I discovered. But you can only find that out for yourself, if you are to do this work, right? Otherwise, it's just hearsay for the most part. So the only sure way to really understand Christ is to become that.